Hey folks, today we're going to deal with exponential functions, which is a super common long answer question on the CST10 exam. Exponential functions are talking about things that build on things over time. So for example, we're talking about money that tends to accrue over a number of years in a bank, and that's this type of question. The other type of exponential function you sometimes see on the exam is one where something loses money. It's kind of like buying a car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses money year on year. Most of the exponential questions that we see on the CST exam are investment questions where there's population growth or money invested. And when money's invested, it gains. And it gains year on year. The rule that we use for exponential functions is y equals ac to the x. And so before I even look at the question here, which is a sample 10-mark question, I want to just remind ourselves what this formula really means. For this rule, our A value is always our initial investment. So if I'm putting $500 in the bank, that's where that number is going to go. X is always the amount of time that we're leaving it there, or after the amount of time that we look and see how well our investment's doing. And C is our rate. So am I gaining money at 1%, at like 7%, 20%? And this rate is always added to the number 1. So I always say that it's sort of like 1.00 plus our rate as a decimal. And this is really simple because there's a reason for that. And the reason is that if I put my $500 in the bank, for example, and it makes 10%, well, I don't want just 10% of my $500. That would be kind of a ripoff, saying like, why did I only get $50? I want my $500 plus my 10%. So in this case, we have to make sure we add that one on, and I'll show that in this question. And finally, our y value is always our final amount. In other words, how much do we make over time when we're talking about investment questions? If you look at this sample exam question, we notice that two people, Tasha and Kate, have invested some money today. Tasha's investment includes investing $3,500, and each year the value of the investment increases by 2.7% in relation to the previous year. So that means in the first year you make 2.7%, add that new profit on, and you make 2.7% on the new amount the next year. So it's compounding. Kate's investment is described by a function f, and that function is 2,800 times 1.05 to the power of x. And what we know from our general rule is that her initial investment must be $2,800 right here, and the rate I will explain is going to be 5%. So it's always 1 plus the rate as a decimal. So you always look at the two places behind the decimal, and that gives you a rate. So in her case, it's a 5% investment. And the actual question, overall question they're asking, is in 9 years, whose investment will have made the most profit? Well, one thing I noticed going back up to Tasha's investment is that there's no rule for this, so we should probably make one. So I'll put this here. I'll just put who we're talking about. And I know that I have my general rule, which is y equals ac to the x. And I'm interested in placing my initial investment in the A spot, which is 3,500. And I'm going to put 1 point, and then I'm interested in the two decimal places after it. So if I put 1.02, that would just be a 2% investment, but I know that it's 2.7, so I can add any extra decimal places right after that. And I also know that the question's asking, how much money will I make in 9 years? So here we go. Now, one common error students do for these questions is that they put the numbers in their calculator in the wrong order. So if you have a calculator that has a hat button like this, oops, like that. That's your exponent button, and some calculators have a button that says y to the x. So these two are your option. So I want you to search for that button right now, and that's the one that we're going to use first. So when you do exponentials on your calculator, you need to do this portion first, the actual exponential portion first. So I'm going to plug it in, 1.027, hit the hat button, or the y to the x button, whichever, to the power of 9. When I do that, I get a number for me it's like 1.270966, whatnot. Okay, now my 3500 is still out there. And I'm going to now just multiply these two numbers together. Now, if you go left to right, you're going to get the wrong answer, so it's important you did that exponent part first. And the value of Tasha's investment in 9 years is $4,448.38. So that's great. Now, if I go to Kate's investment, I notice that we already have the rule. Now they've put f of x there, and I could rewrite that as y equals 2800 1.05 to the x. Now we actually have a value here for x. We're talking about comparing these two people after 9 years. So I'll put that 9 in there. And remember, you have to do this part first. So again, do 1.05 to the power of 9 using one of these two buttons on your calculator, whichever one you have. And I get, I'll leave my 2800 there, like 1.55 13282. I just kept all the decimal places. When I multiply those two values together, I get a dollar value of 43.72. So the question overall says, in 9 years, whose investment will have made the most profit? And you can see from this question, it's pretty close, but you can see that Tasha actually made the most profit in 9 years with that investment. There was a higher principal value, the initial investment. The rate was lower, but I think that original principal investment offset it just a little bit. But you can see that Kate made a lot of gains, even though that 2,800 was there to start because of the higher interest rate. I hope this helps you solve exponential functions. And just remember, always do the exponential portion first before you multiply against the initial investment.